I think they are the best defensive tackle combo in the National Football League. No disrespect to Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat or Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. But I just like the way these two play together. These two fit together. Maybe this was a move, as I said, to kind of set up the next move. You get rid of one of these guys in the offseason, you get some edge help. But I think Jerry really backed himself in a corner with the Micah situation.
Let's get into what happened at the trade deadline, because I saw your tweet about the Cowboys defensive line. I'm like, okay, you have my attention, and they have the best defensive tackle rotation in football. What do you make of the myriad of moves the Cowboys have made after losing 2 straight games?
Well, I think it's one of those things where we all look at the trade deadline as a way to win now. And I think the Cowboys looked at it as a way, how can we improve our team now? But this is really for the long haul. In a perfect world, they would have beat Arizona. You come off the bye, you beat Vegas, and away they go. It didn't work out that way. But in the end, you still make these moves because your defensive tackle has been an issue for a while. Now you got Kenny Clark, you got Quinnen Williams. I think they are the best defensive tackle combo in the National Football League. No disrespect to Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat or Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. But I just like the way these two play together. These two fit together. Let's see how they play together. Dallas, it was interesting from a move standpoint because they need edge rushers.
Yeah.
Like they need guys coming off the edge, but they bolstered the inside. So they're still not done building this defense. I think this is a move to kind of set up the next move, which probably is going to come in the offseason. I love to hear Jerry talk because eventually he's going to say something to kind of put his foot in his mouth. But it's always funny. It's entertainment. But I like the move because I think it starts to solidify a defense that's been porous for a long time.
Well, the defense has been terrible. There's no question about
Yeah.
it. You know, the only defense was worse was the Bengals. So, of course, they traded for a Bengals defender. We can talk about that a little bit later. But my issue, first of all, is, okay, to me, this is an indication that whatever you thought you were getting out of Kenny Clark wasn't working, because you brought in Kenny Clark basically to shore up the run defense, and their run defense has been absolutely awful. So now you're sort of doubling down on that move by getting Quinnen, who, by the way, I want to be clear, I love Quinnen Williams as a player.
Yeah.
I think he's been a wrecking force on a miserable Jets team for a lot of years. But for just being honest about it, he had 1 sack on the first play of the season this year, and I think he's 90th in pressures this year. So the Quinnen Williams I think we think about isn't the Quinnen Williams that's been on the field this year. And maybe a change of scenery will help that. I can certainly understand that. But it's not like he's going from a 1-17 to a 7-1 team. It's a 3-5-1 team that has all kinds of issues. To me, Booger, it feels like the Cowboys are constantly reacting instead of enacting. They're trying to chase their own tail with all of these moves.
Well, think about this also. They signed Odigizua in the offseason. So
Big
now
contract.
Right. So now you have Odigizua, you have Kenny Clark, and you have Quinnen Williams, and I think they're all making above $10 million a year. Quinnen is making 20. Odigizua is close to 20. I don't think they're going to keep 3 defensive tackles making that much money. So
They can't.
maybe this was a move, as I said, to kind of set up the next move. You get rid of one of these guys in the offseason, you get some edge help. But I think Jerry really backed himself in a corner with the Micah situation.
Correct.
And he needed to show everybody, hey, I didn't pay Micah, but I'm willing to spend money and make moves to make my team better. And at the last minute, you go out, you get Quinnen Williams. I like Logan Wilson. I think he's played a lot of good football. He wasn't playing in Cincinnati, so maybe that's why the defense was terrible up there. Who knows? But I think Logan Wilson still has some good football in him, especially when you don't know what you're going to get in DeMario Overshown coming off a horrific knee injury. So this is definitely a move to kind of calm the waters a little bit, but by no way, shape, or form is this a playoff type defense now, which is why I think this was a move to set up whatever they're going to do in the offseason.
Yeah, and I think what you just said, and I'm glad you said it because I say it and people yell at me. What you said is really accurate. I think Jerry does things to get attention. He does things, say, okay, people are still mad about the Micah thing, let me do this. And to me, that's not a fundamental way to build a winning program. And, you know, Jerry's never not going to be the general manager. We all have to accept that. But there's not a single general manager in any of the major sports franchises in this country that would not have a conference championship appearance over 3 decades and still have his job. Jerry is there because Jerry is employing Jerry, and let's just be honest about it. I mean, that's the way it is.
Yeah,
There's no other situation where this would be considered acceptable if you are the general manager and as well as the owner. So I feel bad for Cowboys fans. I really do, because I don't think they have a plan.
They don't have a plan, but has Jerry really had a plan in the last 25 years?
Nope.
Like, we've tried a bunch of different things, but I think here's what he's hit on. He's got a franchise quarterback who's playing above average football, at times
Correct.
MVP level, but definitely above average football. He probably paid $10 million too much for him, but that's Jerry. He'd rather wait and pay him a little more. No problem with that. He's got to pay George Pickens, because Dak really took off when you gave him 2 weapons outside. So are you going to pay George Pickens? George Pickens is not going to play for $20 million, especially when the top receivers are making 35 and 40. So now when you start to look at this team, you got 3 defensive tackles over $10 million. You got CD at 35. You got a quarterback at 60. Can you keep George Pickens? So, there are a lot of moves that have to go on. Wilt McClay, who is the de facto GM, along with Jerry and Steven, are going to have to figure out this money situation, because they paid some young offensive linemen. I tell you the worst money I think they've spent, and you tell me if you agree with this.
Yeah.
I think in a private moment, if you asked them if they could rip up the contract of Trayvon Diggs and DeRon Bland, I think they would, even though they just paid one of them.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they reacted on the DeRon Bland thing because of so much production. But he might have had 6 pick sixes, but he gave up 7 touchdowns also. So it's going to be interesting to see how they factor all these contracts out.
No, I'm glad you said that about DeRon Bland, because, look, they gave him, $90 million this offseason. And DeRon Bland is a splash player both ways, right? Like, the reason that he had all those pick sixes because they weren't throwing the other way, right? They thought they could burn him, and a couple of things went against him. I completely agree with you. The George Pickens thing, though, Booger, to me is really interesting on a variety of levels. You traded for him in the last year of his deal, right?
Yeah.
Which is basically, hey, let's figure this out for 1 year and see what happens. Well, now Pickens is exploding, and to your point, he's going to cost them if whoever Pickens plays for is going to be north of $30 million next year.
Yeah,
well, that's a minimum for him. Well, who is George Pickens' agent?
David Mulligetta.
That's exactly right. Who is Micah Parsons' agent?
David Mulligetta.
Now, I'm not saying agents hold grudges, okay? But I'm also not saying that David Mulligetta is going to be willing to do Jerry any favors here because of the way not only Jerry treated Micah, but in the very public way in which Jerry disrespected arguably the best agent in football through the entire process. And to me, because of that factor, I think if we're really thinking about the future, it would have made more sense to trade Pickens now than try and deal with him in the offseason, which is going to end poorly for the Cowboys.
It may end poorly, but this is all about the quarterback. And when you have Dak playing the way he's playing, which is arguably the best football of his career, I don't think you're going to upset the apple cart. I think they're going to find a way. And it's the old adage, like money, nothing says I'm sorry like another zero. Okay, add another zero. Nothing says I'm sorry like that. I think they find a way. The issue is going to be, how do you structure this team? 2 wide receivers, a quarterback that's going to be 30, and 60. That's kind of what the Bengals are doing right now. But the Bengals seemingly can't play defense. Well, Jerry went out. He's got 3 defensive tackles that are making above 10, 2 above 20. You got 2 corners that are high. Like, somebody's got to go. I'm just not sure who it's going to be. That, to me, is going to be fascinating.
It is, and it's going to be, this is not the first time the Cowboys have boxed themselves into a salary cap corner. I mean, they started when they paid Ezekiel Elliott before they paid Dak Prescott, which caused them to have to get rid of Amari Cooper, who had insane chemistry with Dak Prescott. That created the Dak Prescott situation. Again, it just feels like we're trying to catch up instead of trying to move forward. The Cowboys, realistically, as it stands right now, do you think this Cowboys team make the playoffs?
No, I don't think they make the playoffs. I do think that they go into the offseason, though, they're in a better position in the offseason than they were, because at least they have some talent in places. Maybe you don't play Overshown this year. Maybe you tell Overshown, you take the rest of the year off, you get healthy. So now you come back next year, Overshown, Logan Wilson, you pick whichever 2 defensive tackles you want, probably Quinnen and Kenny Clark, or I don't know Kenny's deal. Kenny's probably got another year left in the deal. Maybe you get rid of Kenny and you go with Odigizua and Quinnen Williams. One's got to be able to play the one technique, the other the three. If that's the case, you probably want Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark, to me, is a better nose tackle, one technique, than he is a three technique.
Yep.
And then you got to figure out the corner situation, because I watched Marvin Harrison Jr., and that's the best game I've seen him play. Yeah. Now, you can say Jacoby Brissett unlocked him, but he was making Deron Bland look like, man, it was chopped liver out there. So they got to figure out this defense, because Dak, I think, is only going to get better. Dak is in a position now. He's about to get married. He's got 2 kids. He's settled down. I've been knowing Dak a long time. I've never seen him as focused. And so I think this level of football is only going to get better. So how do you take advantage of that if you're the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, Deron Bland unlocked Marvin Harrison Jr. It wasn't Jacoby Brissett. Let's just be honest about that. That was the key that opened that safe.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can agree that while the Dallas Cowboys got some players and potentially some financial flexibility, we're still unclear what the plan is, right?